Thank you, everybody. This is really inspiring to be here. I'm having my own imposter syndrome episode, which is something I also just learned about and feel like I'm constantly going through it. We didn't plan this, but actually I have a video set up that my organization just released, and it has to do with soil and the impact that soil can have on the changing climate. I think I'll just introduce what Center for Food Safety kind of does more generally first. We're advocates for sustainable agriculture, and we do that through policy, through legal actions, through consumer outreach. And some of the programs that we have like an organic program. We have a, what else do we have? We have a pollinator protection program, which is just had some big victories on popcorn. We're getting popcorn companies to stop using neonicotinoid-coated seeds in their production. And we also have like a climate and agriculture program that is now moving towards soil, and they just produced this video. And can we start it, I guess?
Cool. Soil is a living miracle. In one handful of soil, there are more organisms than there are humans on Earth. And we are only beginning to understand this vast network of beings right beneath our feet. We rely on healthy soil for 95% of what we eat. Yet, we take it for granted. Thousands of years of plowing, deforestation, and erosion have left our soils in dire shape. And we're accelerating the loss of this essential resource. But there's a lot more to the story. When soil is damaged, it releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and this has had serious consequences for the climate. Too much carbon in the atmosphere is causing the Earth to overheat. That excess carbon is also acidifying our oceans, threatening marine life. Meanwhile, there's not enough carbon where it once was, in the soil. In fact, many of the world's cultivated soils have lost more than 50% of their original carbon stocks. But there's actually some good news. We now know how to put carbon back in the soil where it belongs. Plants capture carbon dioxide in their leaves and pump the carbon down through their roots to feed hungry microorganisms living in the soil. Now, what had been atmospheric carbon, a problem, becomes soil carbon, a solution. Practices like keeping soil covered with plants, increasing crop diversity, composting, and carefully planned grazing are proven ways to put carbon back into the soil. Carbon-rich soils act like giant sponges, absorbing water during floods and providing it to plants in times of drought. And adding carbon to soil makes the land much more productive. The French government recognizes this and is calling on all countries to join them in increasing soil carbon by 0.4% each year. If every nation were to reach this ambitious but achievable goal, we could store 75% of global annual greenhouse gas emissions, enough to make a real difference to our planet's future well-being. Of course, we still need to reduce our fossil fuel emissions, but we don't need to develop expensive or risky technologies. Instead, what we need is a lot more photosynthesis. Climate change can be overwhelming, yet there is real hope. Healthy soil can be a major sink for carbon, but this fact hasn't been well known until now. Because now we know a soil solution is right beneath our feet. click on the link below to find out what you can do to help rebuild our soils.
Yeah, so obviously Michael Pollan was the narrator, and that's actually kind of how I got interested in kind of the food issues. Like as the introduction said, I started cooking, and then I started reading about food and our food system, and I started thinking, like what skills do I have that can be translated into, making a positive impact on the food system? And I really liked to argue with people. So I thought that maybe I could go to law school and maybe do something. So I'm just gonna kind of tell how I got involved at Center for Food Safety, because I went to law school with this very specific focus to do food law and agricultural law, which, this was like 6 years ago, maybe I made that decision, or 6 or 7. And this movement was obviously in full swing already, but there wasn't a specific program for food law or anything like that. So I kind of looked at how, this could be done. So I went to law school and started focusing on environmental law, and then there's something called the PIPS Day, and it's Public Interest, Public Service kind of career fair. And I saw this organization, Center for Food Safety, and I applied to, just to get an interview, and they turned me down, but I heard that if you show up early enough, there might be like an open slot, and you could still get an interview. So I showed up early. I got up at like 6 in the morning and put on a suit, which I had never worn before, and showed up, put my name down, and I actually got like an open interview slot. And then when my interview time came around, the 2 attorneys that I later went on to work with were at lunch. They didn't know that they had to meet with me, so they snuck me in when they had some time. They were obviously very busy working on cases and stuff, and they were taking their time out to do this. And they basically said, well, look, you don't have the experience that we're looking for, but pretty much they were very upfront about it. But what I did, I said, well, what should I do? And they said, well, take environmental law, take administrative law. These are the things that we're using to try and make change. And I said, okay. So the next year I did that. One of the classes I took was, in addition to environmental law and administrative law and all these things, there was now on campus a food law class, so I took that. And in my cover letter the next year, I said, I interviewed with you guys last year, you told me to do this, I did this, I took environmental law, I took administrative law, I took this food law class, and then in the parentheses I said, this might be inappropriate, but some of the first notes in that class that I took was this case involving Monsanto and growth hormone in milk and for milk production. And I had scrawled in the side, in the margins, some untoward things to Monsanto. I won't use that language, obviously, but in my cover letter I did, which was maybe a bad idea, but it was also, I'm definitely not telling you to do this, but know your audience when you're speaking to them. I think it's okay for me to say that here. And in the interview, they did say, well, maybe you shouldn't have done that, but because you did everything else that we told you to do, you can come work for us. So I got a summer job there first, and then at the end of the summer, I knew they had a fellowship position for after graduating, and I said, look, I really want to work here. This is the only thing I want to do. How can I get that fellowship? They told me, okay, well, don't worry about classes. Go get real life experience. Go do externships, do that kind of thing. So that's what I did, and then I was lucky enough to get this position. So I guess really what I'm saying there is if you have the goal in mind and which obviously all of you do, you can do these things. It's kind of crazy to me to be up here speaking about it at all. There's only, when I think about the position that I'm in, there's only, a handful of attorneys that are doing exactly what I'm doing, which is food, agriculture, and the law. And so it's kind of surreal to be up here talking about it. Kind of the way that we approach this issue from our legal team's perspective is when the industry creates a new product, whether that's a pesticide or a new GE crop or a new animal drug or something like that, the government then has to approve it, USDA, FDA, EPA. And when they approve it, almost always, we sue the government. And then and we say, you guys have to follow certain environmental laws and certain administrative laws, which I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty because it's kind of boring. And when we go to go to court, what ends up happening is that the industry, whether it's Monsanto or Bayer or some other industry group that created the product, they intervene, and so we end up going up against the government and the industry. So it's kind of, I mean, we need people like you doing the things that you're doing because it's like a really tough uphill fight, but things can be done. And obviously, there's a lot of different ways to approach it. There's the everything else that you guys have seen up here, and there's also this legal component, and we're trying to fight back. So, you guys are obviously an inspiration, and I just want to thank everybody for listening to me, which is kind of crazy. So, yeah, that's about it.